right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our Trailblazers webinar today. My name is Cheryl O'Connor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Income Conductor, an award-winning retirement income planning technology that engages your clients in the planning process and delivers income certainty, not probability, to your clients. Our Trailblazer series highlights the people in our industry who are forging new paths and developing new ways to achieve success while providing great outcomes for clients. We welcome your questions, so please type them into the Q&A box and we'll try to get to them all during the webinar. So it's my great pleasure to welcome our Trailblazer today, Aaron Klein. As the founder and former CEO of Riskalyze, rebranded Nitrogen, Aaron really needs no introductions. He led the company through 42 consecutive quarters of growth, and the firm was twice named one of the world's 10 most innovative companies in finance by Fast Company magazine. After passing the CEO baton in 2023, Aaron continues to serve on the firm's board of directors. A featured speaker at conferences including Wealth Management CEO Roundtable, Tiburon CEO Summit, Data Disrupt, and broker-dealer events, Aaron also sits on the board of Mountain States Policy Center, a bipartisan think tank advancing free markets and public policy, and he has served 3 times as a community college trustee. I also want to share a personal story. In 2023, at the Wealthies Awards event, Income Conductor won the award for the most innovative retirement income technology solution that year. As I was going up to the stage to receive the award, Aaron jumped out of his chair to congratulate me and give me a big hug. Aaron, on top of all your success, you are just one of the nicest people in the industry. And I'm thrilled to have you on as my Trailblazer guest.
Well, thank you. And that was very unexpected, but thank you for bringing back a very fun memory of a very fun night and a well-deserved award on your part.
Oh,
so that's
thank
pretty
you.
cool. That's pretty cool.
Well, it was really memorable.
Thank you.
So let's start out. Can you share with our listeners how you started in the industry? I'm always interested, as other people are, in someone's journey, and then kind of give us a perspective on how it's evolved in your estimation since you founded Riskalyze in 2011.
That's absolutely. And by the way, I can see that Wealthy right up on your bookshelf behind you.
Yes.
I have one back over there as well. So that's a wonderful honor that we share. Yeah. So, oh my goodness, I just feel so grateful and blessed to have had the opportunity to serve this industry. It was really interesting because, I've told this story a bunch of different ways. I was thinking about maybe a different angle on it to tell for your listeners and audience. And I was thinking about it, and one of the things that's interesting is I had done a startup that hadn't really worked out, and it had failed, it had shut down, and it was definitely a bummer. And you're always bummed out when something like that happens. And we were about to adopt our first child. And so I just needed to go make some money and take care of my family. So I ended up taking this job. There were some great things about this job. There were some tough things about this job. I was there for 4 years. As it turns out, it was a great time to kind of be in a job and be in exile from starting something, because that was like 2007 to 2011, and so if you think about those 4 years, like 2007 was the subprime mortgage crisis, 2008 global financial crisis, bleeding into 2009, and then a lot of recovery after that. And so it actually was a really good time to be in a job. And I was working for this division of an options brokerage firm, and we were building technology products for options traders to kind of assess the risk of individual options trades. And I remember saying to a buddy of mine who was a financial advisor, it is crazy how the average individual thinks about the concept of risk. And he said to me, And I'll never forget this. If you think that's crazy, you should see how us financial advisors think about it. You know, we just,
Yeah.
and if you rewind back to that time, like there really wasn't the concept of like thinking about risk. Risk tolerance, like there was in terms of compliance. You would have a piece of paper from your broker dealer or your firm or whatever. You'd fill out the little questionnaire, you'd throw it in the file, and if you ever got into an arbitration, you'd pull out the file and try to use it to your advantage. But what we really kind of thought about, that what he said just struck me, and I'm like, is it true that that basically you're trying to suss out from your client kind of whether they're conservative or moderate or aggressive, and then you're trying to match that up with an investment portfolio that's kind of named the same way? He said, yeah, that's basically it. He goes, I try to get more sophisticated than that, but it's pretty complicated to do, and it's really impossible for the client to understand. Like
Yeah.
I can do it, but it's really impossible for the client to understand. And so I just started looking at that, and I was just, I don't know, obsessed with that for a little bit of time, and just saying, it feels to me like there's a reason contractors and architects don't speak in language like they want a moderately conservative hallway leading into their moderately aggressive living room or something like that. Like they use feet and inches in a blueprint for a reason so that the house will come together. And so, I was like, imagine if we could put the feet and inches into this for financial advisors. And, it doesn't change, it doesn't replace what needs to happen with the financial plan, right? It doesn't replace what needs to happen with the income plan to turn that into a productive retirement and make sure that you sequence that right for people. It doesn't change any of that. It's about probably earlier in the process and making sure that people don't blow up a perfectly good plan for later
Mhm.
by making a really bad decision now, right? And so that was kind of the original vision for it. And
And people love metrics, right?
right. And
I've
and
always thought, "What's my number?" has was a
yeah.
genius marketing idea.
Well, and I think that, it was actually like very controversial inside our walls at the beginning. And there were a couple of people involved in the company early on. Some people we had some pretty smart people contributing some patents and some different things. And so there was a bit of a debate around this. And I remember, just being violently told, you cannot reduce risk to a single number. And I'm like, okay, I kind of agree with you, like from an academic sense, but from a person, from a human being understanding what we're talking about here, I'm pretty sure you can. And like, here's how we're going to do it. And all in all, like that really worked. We were able, and I think it just resonated with financial advisors because they
Yeah.
were able to see, this is not trying to tell me how to advise my client. This is really helping my clients see and understand the things that I've been telling them for years. And
Mhm.
and that's, I think, really was one of the big secrets of why Riskalyze was so successful, is we were not the hero of that story. We knew full well that the advisor was the hero of the story, and we were just building the capabilities for the advisor to kind of like help that story be clear, and help the financial advisor kind of put that front and center with their client. And so anyway, what an incredible journey. I look back on that time, and I'm really proud of what an amazing team accomplished. I got to work with a lot of people that were some of the smartest people that I had worked with in my career up till then, and it was just something else. And um, it's amazing to see how the wealth tech industry continues to evolve, but what we've built has kind of stood the test of time and really continues to
Mhm.
power a lot of financial advisors today, and I'm really grateful for that.
So, what are the big changes you think you've lived through since 2011? What do you see as the main
Wow. That's a big question. I mean, do you mean in
shifts
the
in the
industry or
yeah,
personally?
in the industry?
In the industry, I mean, well, the constant is definitely change and innovation.
Hmm.
And I would say back when we first started, I don't think we realized at the time that we were probably at the beginning of a wave of innovation. And so it felt actually very lonely at that time. Like when we launched, I remember, kind of preaching the message that there was a missing pillar in the advisor's tech stack, that like everybody had a CRM and a portfolio accounting tool and a financial planning tool. And there was a missing pillar, because you'll blow up a perfectly good long-term financial plan if you aren't in alignment with how
Mm-hmm.
you should be invested today. And so the performance report is backward looking of like what we have accomplished, and the financial plan is forward looking, but it's way in the future of what we're going to do. And like I'm like, there's a missing piece here. And I had a lot of smart people who had been in the industry for a good long time say, "Oh, that's just not going to work." There are these three pillars. If you want to try to kind of be the financial planning tool in a different lens, like that might work. And I was just like, "That's just not the vision. Like that's not what we're trying to do." And fortunately, we turned out to be right there. I think that now I look at the wealth tech space, you look at the Kitsis, fintech map, and it is an explosion of logos, right? And I think that, on the one hand, I'm kind of grateful that we got to be on the front end of that, because who knows, like in today's world, there's a lot of noise, and you have to do a lot to kind of break through that noise
Mm-hmm.
for customers in that way. But on the other hand, also we've now got things like I can't imagine what we might have been able to accomplish in 2011 and 2012 in the early days of our existence if we had the kinds of tools that we have today, like AI, which I know we'll talk more about in a little bit. But like it is incredible how that is supercharging innovation, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So going back to the advisory business,
Yeah.
you've worked with advisors and advisory firms for decades now. Um, what do you see as the key drivers for
Mm.
advisory businesses, into the future, and how should advisors be leveraging those towards, growing the firm, achieving good client outcomes and success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, I always like to think of that question through the lens of first principles, and just like, let's set aside for a moment what makes us special as financial advisory businesses, and let's just like zoom out to the big picture. The key value drivers for any business are typically product and distribution. And so, um, you know, if you start to break that down and think about that, there's different products that or different businesses that are emblematic of that idea. So, like the iPhone is an example. The iPhone has both, right? The iPhone, it is both a very unique, differentiated product. You can't buy the iPhone from anybody else, and Apple derives a lot of the value from distribution. They actually now have tipped up. I don't know that the services business that they get from people, like all this additional revenue they get from people who are iPhone users. I don't think it's above the iPhone, but it actually is like above. I believe it's above the Mac now. Like services is Apple's number two business behind the iPhone. Okay. So they derive a huge amount of value by kind of owning the distribution to the customer directly. We either go into the Apple store and buy it, or we go to apple.com and buy it. Or if we buy it indirectly, immediately the first thing Apple's trying to get us to do is to create an Apple ID so that we actually have a direct relationship with them. And that's, the power of distribution there. Okay, now we go to the other end of the spectrum. I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm surrounded by a lot of farmers, and it's not just potato farmers, but we have corn and we have hay and we have all kinds of farmers I drive through farmland to and from different places here. Okay. And the wonderful, hardworking people that are farmers here enjoy neither of those value driver benefits for their farms. They don't have a unique differentiated product, right? An ear of corn from them is the same as an ear of corn over here. And they don't own their distribution. Like I do not know when I buy corn at the store which farmer that corn is coming from, right? So there's no distribution value driver. And that's why typically what you see is agricultural businesses do not have very large profit margins. It's kind of cost plus a little bit of margin, and it's a very competitive business, and some of them lose money, if they don't have enough scale and things like that. So that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. You think about like car companies, they have product, but usually not distribution because they don't go all the way to the end consumer. So now we come back to financial advisors. And what I find really interesting is that financial advisors, if you listen to them talk to a prospective client, they talk like their value driver's product. They'll say, oh, we've got the best research team here. We've got access to investments nobody else has access to. We're the best in the world at putting together a diversified portfolio of blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like, let's get real. The reality is that that potential client actually could just open a self-directed brokerage account and do just about anything that the financial advisor could do for them. Okay. Here's the good news. They don't want to. They don't want to, right? And so what I think what advisors need to understand is that they actually have, they're not in the position of the farmers. Like, they have good margins and a really good business, but it's because of the value driver of distribution. Financial advisors own a direct relationship with their client, and it's a relationship built on trust. And so that's why, by the way, that the math shows that if a financial advisor departs a firm and goes independent or switches to a different firm or something like that, typically 90% of the client relationships will follow the advisor, not the firm. Okay.
Person. Yeah.
That's right, because the financial advisor owns the distribution. That's the value driver of their business. So I always just say, like, what's really important is that the smartest financial advisors will stop pretending that their advantage is product. And they will focus on strengthening their relationships. They'll just spend all that additional energy focusing on strengthening their relationships, deepening their relationships, finding other ways to add value to the relationship, because that is the value drive of their business. And it's how you create a really, really, really valuable financial advisory business over the long run.
Oh, I love that. So what kind of habits do you think they should develop to strengthen those relationships?
Yeah. I think probably the most important habit that financial advisors have got to strengthen is to, and I see this in some places really well, and then I see it in some places like it doesn't, the financial advisor has no muscle in this at all. And but I think it's getting very generous with expertise. Okay. When I was a kid, I still remember my parents surprised me, and they bought the World Book encyclopedias. Okay. And I mean, I think I was like 8 years old, and 9 years old, 10 years old, somewhere in that range. It was a great day. Like,
A huge investment too.
Oh, yes. I mean, they paid like $60 a month, which was probably like $250 a month now, for a long time to get those encyclopedias. And, by the way, they were only good for a year, and then, technically they were out of date, but that's another story. Okay. So like, we get these, I mean, for a kid like me, it's absolutely amazing. Like, you can walk to the shelf and you can pick up one of these volumes and you can read about almost anything, like any topic, and you can learn about it on demand. You don't have to wait, go to the library, blah, 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 all this stuff. And so I was just like in hog heaven that we had the World Book encyclopedias. Now today, kids are walking around with the equivalent of 100 million times the information in the World Book encyclopedias, accessible from a piece of glass that is in their pocket. Like, that just boggles the mind. 100 million times the information that was on those pages is freely accessible to them on a piece of glass that they carry around their pocket. So what does that mean? Well, the internet has flipped the equation here. It used to be that knowledge and expertise was what was scarce, right? And that's not scarce anymore. It's flipped the scarcity equation. What is scarce today is attention. That's the new currency. Before we had like a small amount of knowledge and expertise and lots of time. And we've got the same amount of time, but almost infinite knowledge and expertise to fill it with. So now what is scarce is attention. And we've still only got 24 hours in a day. And so what I see is advisors sometimes worried that they can't share too much of their expertise, or people might just go do it on their own. And I'll just be really blunt, like nobody who's going to be your client has the time or the willingness to do it on their own. That's
Yeah.
just not going to
Great.
happen.
Yeah.
People are trying. The reason that people want to hire you as a financial advisor is because number one, this stuff is super important and I don't want to mess it up. And number two, it's very complex. Sure, I can ask AI about it. I can do this. I don't want to. I don't have time for it. It's so important to me that I want to go to a trusted person to deal with the complexity, abstract the complexity away from me, and manage this. And so what I am using is I'm using small bits of my attention to look out there and say, who has the most expertise? Who knows the most about this? Who sounds the most knowledgeable? What clicks for me and makes sense? Oh, that's how you do it. And this is the person that I would like to have do it for me. So it's counterintuitive, but the financial advisors who recognize that the internet has flipped the scarcity equation and are generous with the expertise are the financial advisors who get recognized by people with scarce attention now as the experts. And it's like, I want to work with them.
Yeah, and I think your point about how, there's disparate data that you can get, right?
Yes.
But I love your point about making sense of the complexity, because when all that data comes together, and we see that at Income
Yes.
Protector, right?
Yes.
So retirement income planning is very complex. There are a lot of
Yes.
components to
Which
it.
account do I take it out of first when it's
Exactly.
time?
And
Yes.
all the new things like
Yes.
RMDs and IRMA and Roth.
Yes.
So it's the advisor who can
Yeah. Can I go
time.
ask ChatGPT how to do that? I'm
Right.
sure I could. And then I could sit
Exactly.
there and try to figure out how to apply it to my life. Or I could go to an advisor equipped with Income Conductor and they can show me their expertise. And I can go, I want you to implement this for me.
Right. And see how that one piece of the puzzle fits in with everything else. I mean, that's what
100%.
I think people are missing. They're overwhelmed with data, but they don't have context and connectivity.
100%.
So we've got a question from Lydia. She said, I love what Aaron said. How or what is the best way to scale the relationship business?
Oh, that's a great question.
That's a challenge.
Well, I mean, I think we were planning, you and I, on talking about AI. And so like that's a pretty good segue into that. Because you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about how AI might impact the advisory business. And I would say that what I think is really interesting. Now, I want to be really clear. I have been accused many times of being a glass half full person. Okay. I am an optimist at heart. If I sound a little too optimistic about all of this, I plead guilty. Like my wife will tell you, yes, he can always tell you why it's going to be sunny tomorrow. He can. But look, I am so bullish on the human financial advisor in the context of AI because now here's my negative sign. If you are a financial advisor who actually doesn't like to talk to people and you prefer to be what I like to call a process clicker, okay? You're somebody who kind of really likes the mechanics of like, okay, the client says that we want to do this. So now I get to go over and I get to go into this system and I get to click these things and set this up this way. And then I'm going to go over to that system and I'm going to copy that over and paste that over. And I'm going to, set this up this way. And then I'm going to go to this system, make some good notes on it and blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, that's process clicking. That is largely going to go away over the next 5 years. Like a lot of that is going to go away. We're going to be in a whole new world of how AI really shortens those cycles and we're able to express our intent and have the process clicking work that eats up a lot of time right now. That's going to largely like shrink down and be done very, very quickly by our AI assistant in the future. I'm very convinced of that. So So I will say this, it's going to be a challenge for financial advisors that don't love to connect with people,
Yeah.
okay? Because it's going to shift if like there's a pie chart right now, and I don't know what the pie chart slices look like right now, but if the pie chart is like 50% process clicking and 50% connecting and relationship building with people, it's going to shift to more like 90-10, like 90% relationship building with people, 10% process clicking and overhead work. And I don't know the exact time frame that's going to be, but I'm confident that that's going to be the case. And
Mhm.
so to Lydia's point, like that's going to give us some incredible scale in relationship driven businesses. Okay, because there's more. By the way, not every client wants to talk to you another like 40 or 50% more. Okay, so it's going to create more space for more clients. That's going to manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Some people may choose to compete on price. I have not found that financial advisors, or frankly, the clients of financial advisors, are the most price sensitive consumers in the world. The clients of financial advisors care a heck of a lot more about having the right person who they're a fit with, who they connect with,
Yep.
who is smart, who demonstrates expertise. That's who they want on the case. They're not about getting like the cheapest possible price. And, again, everybody wants to be treated fairly. Everybody wants to know that they're getting a good deal. But I think that that generally holds true. So some financial advisors might compete on price. I think some financial advisors might actually make their businesses a lot more profitable because they're just going to be able to easily take on more clients without that being a
Mhm.
bigger burden for them or taking anything away from the clients that they serve. Here's another crazy idea. I think a lot of financial advisors are going to go, you know what? With this technology, since I can afford 25 or 30% or 40%, or I don't know what the number is going to be, more time per client, I'm gonna future proof my practice. I'm going to basically, for no additional cost, offer to help generation two at a
Yeah.
lower level. I'm going to
Yeah.
help the kids of my clients now. That's a great investment. I know that they're going to inherit the money in the next 10, 20, 25 years. Like, I'm going to build that investment now and become their financial advisor. And then as they tip over the edge of a certain amount of assets, sure, they'll transition to being a full paying client here. And that's great for me. But for now, I can afford to do it because AI is expanding my time and I future proofed my business.
Yeah, and we actually have advisors, some of our customers who are moving into that area of servicing the next generation and
Yeah.
saying, maybe I can monetize this a little bit. Maybe we
Yeah.
can do like a small subscription basis
Yes.
where, they can feel they can call on me, but it's not like servicing like a full service client.
Right. And it builds the relationship. Yeah. Is that the most profitable part of your business? Heavens no.
No, but
Is it the
it's
most
an investment.
long-term profitable part of your
Yeah.
business?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. Because tell you what, imagine going to sell your advisory practice in 5, 10, 15, 20 years and being able to show how these clients that make up your revenue, you actually have a relationship with Gen 2 across 70% of
Yeah.
them, and you future proofed your business. I mean, that just create I'm the investor or the buyer is totally willing to pay a strong multiple then because they know that you've actually built a business that will stand the test of time.
That's a great point. So, talking about advisors transitioning,
Yeah.
um, the stat that came out from the research that over 100,000 advisors will be retiring over the
Mm,
next few years, which
mm,
is really scary.
yeah.
And who's going to replace them? Because the demand is not going to go away. It might even,
Right.
as finances get more and more complicated, demand might grow. So,
Sure.
um, coupled with that is the reported failure rate of young advisors coming into the business at 72%, which is
Wow.
really alarming to me. What do you think
Yeah.
that what advice would you give to firms bringing on younger advisors or younger advisors
Yeah.
themselves, coming
Yeah.
into the business to avoid being, part of that statistic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I recently had the opportunity to go over and right here in my home state, go over to BYU Idaho has this amazing financial planning program. They invited me to come over and speak there and just kind of spend some time with the students there and invest in those students in the financial planning program. Just amazing to see the next generation that is coming up.
Hmm.
And, when I think about, I hadn't really seen that 72% failure rate statistic that you talked about, but that's very alarming. That should be a wake up call for all of us in this industry. Um, I was thinking about it last night as I was thinking about, doing this with you, this discussion. And, um, I think at some level, I think it's a recruiting problem. I think that the kinds of people that we are kind of passively attracting into the financial advice space are largely people with finance and economics degrees. And I have nothing against people with finance and economics degrees. I've worked with many of them. They're awesome people. But I think what we sometimes fail to realize is like a lot of being a financial advisor is really not about exercising the finance or the economics degree. It's about exercising something like the psychology degree, right? It's a
Yes.
lot of relationship building and
Yeah.
trust building and coaching, behavioral coaching, and getting people to make good decisions when under horrible levels of stress, whether that stress is induced by the markets or whether that stress is induced by some kind of personal circumstance or challenge or problem or job loss or family issue or something like that, right? And so, you know, building a supportive, empathetic relationship that can help people make good decisions under stress is probably the number one job of every financial advisor. And, again, nothing against any of my good friends with finance and economics degrees, but that is not exactly their highest skill. So if we are recruiting, I think a lot of them have learned to adapt, right? If we're
Hmm.
recruiting people into this industry largely on the basis of like, oh, come be a financial advisor, manage people's money. Everybody's like, oh, finance and economics degrees, oh, surprise, like your actual job is psychology and behavioral coaching. Okay. That
Especially
can
during market downturns.
yeah, that can speak to, I think, what could drive that problem. So, but the other thing is that I really do think that this is also a problem of economics, right? And I think we need to do something as an industry to solve this. And I think we can, but we almost need like a new kind of venture capital, like a financial advisor venture capital to kind of like help these businesses get started. I'll just sketch it very, very quickly, but like if
Mhm.
you are an all-star advisor, I would say most people would say an all-star advisor might acquire $10 million dollars of new assets a year. That is not a lot of revenue coming into an advisory practice, okay? And people are probably, the average is probably more like half that number. And that's a very small amount of revenue coming into, that could be revenue growth of 30, 40, $50,000 a year coming
Mhm.
into a new advisory practice. And people can't live on 30, 40, $50,000 a year. And it's going to take them, you can do fine anywhere between maybe year 4 through year 6. Okay. You can do great in year 6 through year 8. The very, very best people probably can do fine in years 3 and 4, and then great in years like 5 or 6 or something like that. But
Mhm.
but that's a long kind of scale up time for somebody brand new coming into the business. And so it's the getting there that is the problem. And I just think we need to figure out a new model for advisors to get into the business. It's great to build firms and hire people as employees. But if we really want to attract a lot of people into the wonderful business that is being a financial advisor, once you're at a little bit of scale, 60, $70 million of assets or something like that in your firm, if we want to attract people into that kind of business and being a fiduciary for their clients at that level, we need to figure out. I mean, I haven't modeled it, but I'd love to see somebody create a model to kind of invest in the best young advisors with minority equity upside in their businesses and give them kind of a 5-year runway to
Yeah.
to get to scale. And that kind of model could be really, really interesting for helping you get advisors in the business. So I think it's partly recruiting. I think it's partly economics. And I think we as the industry should have a vested interest in figuring out how to solve this because to put it bluntly, like financial advisors need somebody to sell to at the other end
Exactly.
of their
Exactly.
practice.
And I would imagine that having a strong transition partner
Yes.
who can carry on the business,
Yes.
when the older advisor walks out the door,
Yes.
would increase the valuations as well, So
Yes.
just
And
selling
that's
that
another
term.
model. Yeah, that's another model to your point. Most advisors typically want a lump sum because they kind of
Mhm.
want to go risk off when they retire. And thinking about it a little bit more long term and going, what if I chose the best possible future partner and structured it so that I kind of take risk off and I get structured cash flow out of the business
There you go.
while that person owns the equity, risk in the business. And that's how I kind of get my payout a little bit over time. I've seen a few of those done, and I think that could be a great model as well for getting more people into the business. So,
The
right people,
retirement
right
income plan.
economics. There you
It's
go.
very
It's almost like they use Income Conductor to figure out their succession plan. Hey, that's a new idea for you. You're welcome. Okay.
okay. So John has a comment. What was once the career agency system that was dismantled a generation ago? So they were the ones who actually
Yeah.
brought the advisors in and trained them,
Great point.
and gave them a salary until they were, profitable and self-sustaining. So
Great point, John. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we are actually over time. That 30 minutes went by so quickly, Aaron.
It did.
I love talking with you. I love the way your brain works and,
Thank you.
your ideas for the future. Just amazing. So, thank you so much for your generous time and
Thank you.
thoughts today. It's been such a pleasure having you as a Trailblazer guest.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, and thanks everybody who attended the webinar today. Watch out, you will be sending out a recording so you can replay and listen to Aaron's nuggets of wisdom again. So watch out for next month's Trailblazers. All right, thanks, Aaron. Take care.
Thanks so much, Cheryl.
All right, bye.